This time on Ask Rad Rat, we talk about helium decks and the best way to clean your bearings. Let's get into it. Welcome back to Rad Rat Video, the channel where you can learn something new about skateboarding 3 times a week. Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, we talk about something in the skateboarding world, from culture to learning tricks on the shred school, to video game reviews, to looking at the careers of your favorite pros. And today, we're actually answering your questions on the series Ask Rad Rat. So I've got a couple for you today. First one is from Fat Scout, who says, yo, what happened to the gimmick decks that were all the rage in the 2000s or so? Like, Element used to have their helium and push decks, and Darkstar made the armor light decks or whatever. It seemed like everyone was doing those kinds of decks in like 2008, 2009-ish, but then everyone stopped. Funny story for you. So I tried to look up when the helium decks stopped being produced. And for those of you who don't know, Element used to make boards with air pockets inside that were supposed to make the board a little bit lighter. I think they said that it also made them stronger somehow, but the idea was that there were just air pockets inside the wood, where there was just gaps in the wood, and it would make it lighter. And I remember those quite a few years back, and I looked them up, and so CCS doesn't have them, Active Ride Shop doesn't have them, but Zumiez had some in stock right now. And I was very surprised. I thought maybe their site was out of date. I thought that these are long gone, but I actually had an errand in town, and I actually went to Zumiez, and it was right there on display, their helium deck. I don't know when they stopped making them. The Element site doesn't actually show any currently in production or anything, but there it is right there. So I don't think gimmick decks have actually died in any way, and there might actually be even more of them than there used to be. So we used to have the slick bottom decks. They came in waves. There were some in the early 90s, there were some in the early 2000s, and there are some right now. You've got the P2 decks, you've got all the stuff that Almost does with their different kinds of inserts. They have, I think there's like an 8-ply deck too that's extra strong. The one thing that Element is still doing, they have their twig boards, which are smaller and lighter and everything for kids, all kinds of stuff like that. So there are just as many gimmicks as there were back then. They're just different ones for the most part, except for those helium ones. If you know the story on those, let me know. I don't know if they're just in select markets or they're making them specifically for Zumiez or what. The people who were working there at the time knew nothing about skateboarding, so I couldn't really get any answers about it. But they are still making that kind of stuff. Every deck brand wants to be the one that you go to. And if the graphics aren't going to be enough to get you to buy a specific brand every time, they have to be the best. You can't have the exact same board as everyone else, but just have a different coat of paint on it. You want to be able to have this cool new thing that's going to give you the edge in skateboarding. That's never really going to go away. You know, there's always going to be the next carbon fiber, polymer tipped, or the tips that you can remove and put back on. Someone's always going to be making something to stand out from the crowd. So I don't think that gimmicks are going away, and I don't think that we're going to stop seeing even some of those ones that you've talked about for a while now. Second question is from Hopeless Skate Rat, who asks, what's the best way to clean bearings? When I clean them, they seem to get dirty faster. This is kind of an interesting thing because I noticed that too. And I have to thank you for asking this because I did a lot of research and now I actually know what the problem is. So one thing that you should know right off the bat, do not use WD-40 for anything with bearings because there's two big problems with it. First of all, what it'll often do, you spray your bearings and it just kind of helps the dirt to sink in more because it lubes up the dirt so that it can slide into your bearings. And it does a lot more damage than it would have if you had just left them alone. The other thing is that it is not necessarily a lubricant. One thing I didn't realize, I did a lot of research on bearings and machine shops and all this kind of stuff, and the formula of WD-40 is not exactly known. People don't really know what's in it for sure. They have some kind of list of ingredients that was found somewhere, and people have a rough idea, but no one really knows exactly, and it's not designed for bearings. There's a couple different issues with it. It doesn't have the right viscosity that you would want for a lubricant. There are certain things that a lubricant will have added into it that help reduce wear, and WD-40 does not have that either. It doesn't have an additive that helps it stay at the same level. It'll get build up and it'll get sludgy and it'll eventually clog your bearings. So there's a lot of reasons to not use WD-40, but what should you actually do? I went to the Bones website, the Bones Bearings website, and I looked through all of their instructions for what to do. And it's pretty simple actually, but here's what you do. So you take apart your bearing, take off the shield and all that stuff, and then you want to soak it in a solvent of some kind to get all of the gunk off of it, to get all the oily residue and junk off of it. And they had a couple of suggestions for what to use. They said to use pure isopropyl alcohol, not the stuff from the grocery store that's 10%, you need to get pure, gum out carburetor cleaner, or acetone. And in a pinch they said you can use paint or lacquer thinner, but that will be more likely to leave residue or film on the bearing. So that's kind of a last resort. Try to go for the other things if you can. And what you want to do, you take apart the bearing and you just soak them. So you fill up a dish of some kind with it, something that's safe. It says certain plastics might melt, so you want to be smart about what you use, but you soak your bearings in there, let everything loosen up and kind of fall off, and then you take them out, rinse them off, or wipe them off. Don't rinse water on them, obviously. Wipe them all down, put them back together, and then you have to lube it up with something that's actually bearing lube. Of course, the Bone site is going to recommend to use their speed cream, but there are a lot of different creams and oils and greases and stuff that you can put in bearings that are designed for it. I had no idea any of this stuff was true because when I looked it up, you have to have the anti-wear additive and the anti-sludging additive, all that kind of stuff. I had no idea. But if you get something that says it's 4 bearings on it, then I think you'll be in good shape. You can get the Bone stuff. I'm sure it's fine. I've never personally used it. I just get the cheap bearings, and Bones Reds actually is what I use. And when they go bad, I just buy new ones. But maybe now I will actually be able to clean them and do a decent job of it. So as long as you're getting something designed for bearings and you're cleaning them first, you're soaking them and letting the gunk get off of it, then that should help. The tolerances in a bearing are very small. You know, the actual balls inside of it, there might be less than a width of a hair in between that and like the track and all that kind of stuff. So it's really easy for them to get clogged. You have to remove before you add more stuff into it. So that's what I was able to find on that. Good luck with your bearings. Hopefully you're able to get those cleaned up. And if you have any more questions for me in the future, I have a link to my Twitter and my Instagram below. Send me a DM on either one of those and I'll take a look at your question for a future video. In the meantime, here are some more videos that YouTube recommends you might want to check out. And also my logo on the screen, tap that so you can keep learning new things about skateboarding 3 times a week. Thanks for watching.